From 1930 to 2024, I'm going to be testing every football product from the last 100 years to see how much the boots, balls and goalie gloves have changed. First up, 1930.
So our first product of the video is a football from the 1930s, and it looks like this. It's brown, it's leather, and it's very heavy. Let's test it out. I've only been using this ball for 10 minutes and it's already pretty much doubled in weight.
You can see the ball change colour as it gets wet, and that makes it a lot heavier and a lot harder to kick. As you can see from these shots, it's actually really hard to get the ball off the ground.
This ball must weigh about a kilogram. So I think it's fair to say that 100 years ago, the footballs weren't great, but what were the boots like? Now, I think it's fair to say that football boots 100 years ago were pretty different. How did anyone play in these?
So first things first, it took about 5 minutes to put these boots on.
These are easily the most uncomfortable boots of all time. It's ridiculous.
I then tried doing a few skills in them.
Yeah, you can understand why players weren't doing so many skills back in the day.
Because of how heavy and bulky these boots are, hitting a good shot in them was close to impossible.
Whoa. It's like swinging a sledgehammer. It's going to be so interesting to see how everything evolves throughout the video, because these boots are a world away from the things we see these days.
But now let's head to 1960, when goalkeeper gloves first started being used.
So gloves like these would have started to be used in the early 60s. Before that, keepers would just use bare hands. You definitely feel the sting a lot more. Definitely stings.
So these goalie gloves still had a lot of improving to do, but how much had football boots changed by the 1960s?
Right, so I've got the boots from 1962 and there's a price tag on for £2 from the 1960s, which today is worth about £60, so you know, that's not a bad price. Let's see what they look like. You know what, these aren't actually too bad. These look pretty cool. They're a world away from the 1930s boots. They're a bit stiff, I'm not gonna lie, but they're a bit more of a sleek design. You could definitely play in these, not too bad at all.
I tried to put these boots on, but it turns out shoe sizes must have been different in the 60s.
Nah, there's no chances there.
Nah, they ain't getting on.
So instead, let's head to 1978. By the 70s, footballs had changed a lot. Gone were the days of a brown leather ball. Now there was a new sleek design, and I've got to say, it was so much better. The Adidas Tango, used in the 1978 World Cup, to this day is still one of the most iconic footballs ever made. Now, if you weren't already aware of this ball, I'm sure that you'll all recognise these boots that got released in 1979. The Adidas Copa Mundial, the most sold football boot of all time, and also one of the most iconic. This boot is a lot softer than the one from 1962, so things have definitely improved. In 1979, boots were still following a very classic design, so I'm interested to see how things change as we go through the years. It's 1992 and the Premier League had just been created, but they needed a football for the opening season.
And they landed on this, the Mitre Pro Max. And honestly, this is a horrible football, I'm not even going to lie. I'm going to be honest, in the 90s, I actually think the quality of football's reduced, because that is far worse than the 1978 Tango.
Now we head to 1998, where the first ever Nike Mercurials were released.
Mate, honestly, for a pair of boots that were made over 20 years ago, they feel just like normal modern day boots.
In 2022, these now sell for around £2,000, making them one of the most expensive football boots money can buy. For skills, these boots were way ahead of their time. Super lightweight and could easily pass as a modern boot. I took them to the pitch to do some shooting and they performed great there too. Now it's time to see how football products changed after the millennium.
One Tuesday, I
I'm looking tired and feeling quite sick. I felt like there was something.
Now, you may notice that just behind me there's a sheet of glass. That's because in 2004, Nike released these, the T90 boots, supposedly the ultimate football boots for shooting. So let's test it. You can see that Nike have deliberately offset the laces to the side, so you've got more surface area to shoot on. Right, got the boots on. Let's smash it.
This was done in a safe and controlled environment, so please don't try this at home.
Right, I'm hoping we can do this in one take. Let's go.
So shot number 1 was absolutely terrible. So I put the ball down and we went again.
Hey, I put some new shoes on and suddenly everything.
That was a nice shot, but I know these boots can be more accurate than that.
I put some new shoes on and everybody's smiling. It's so inviting. No short on money, but long on time.
This is a sort of chaos that the T90 boots caused in the early 2000s.
Don't need an excuse.
The T90 campaign was so successful that the next year Nike released this, the T90 Aero Ball, one of the Premier League's most iconic footballs, and now sells for over £1,000.
Then I made my way to the kitchen.
Now, by 2006, the Predator boots had been around for a while, but Adidas were about to release what would go on to be one of the greatest boots ever made.
Round and round.
The Predator Mania was one of the most successful releases of all time.
Hey, I put some new shoes on and suddenly everything is right.
These boots were really nice to play with, but using them now I could definitely tell they weren't a modern boot, but the design is timeless.
It's so inviting. No short on money, but long on time. Slow.
So the Jabulani, known for its controversial movement, definitely stole the show in 2010 and is probably the most recognisable football of all time. We then travelled to 2014 for the next iconic product. This ball of the summer was voted one of football fans' favourite World Cup balls, and it's easy to see why. It's also one of my personal favourites. In 2014, we saw one of the biggest innovations when it comes to football boots. That was the concept of sock boots.
Boots like these completely changed what football boots were supposed to look like. It was a big risk from Nike, but it definitely paid off.
Nike changed the game with the Magista and Superfly, and it paved the way for how football boots are made to this day.
2015 was a massive year for football boots because Adidas retired the best-selling, most iconic football boot of all time and replaced it with these. And let's just say that was pretty controversial.
The Predator was a classy design. These were far from it. A lot of football fans hated this boot. Now, playing in them, they're actually pretty decent. They're very comfortable and pretty lightweight.
Now look, they're a decent boot, but they're not the Predator.
Just a few years after these boots were released, Adidas scrapped them and brought back the Predator.
Now, after Nike's success with a sock football boot in 2014, in 2016 Adidas decided they need to innovate too, and they came up with a laceless football boot. For me, these are super uncomfortable.
Now, these boots look pretty cool, but for me, they were very uncomfortable. When these were first released, the hype was crazy, but if I'm honest, football boots are definitely better with laces. But apart from the comfort problem, they were a decent boot to play in.
So it's been a while since we last took a look at goalie gloves, but in 2018 they now look like this. They're almost an extension of the arm, but honestly, I really like them. I've got to say, they're a lot better than the 1960s gloves, that's for sure. I think it's fair to say goalie gloves have definitely improved over time.
Then in 2022, we had the Al-Rilla ball. This ball was made by Adidas for the World Cup in Qatar in 2022. And honestly, to use, this is a fantastic football, and it really shows how far balls have improved over the years. If you compare this to the football at the start of the video, it's just 10 times better, and it also looks great. In 2023, football boots look like this, super lightweight, super thin, which is great for skills and touch, but when shooting in these, especially on a cold day, it actually stings your foot.
So if we look how far the boots have come from 1930 to 2024, it's just a world of difference. It's insane. Oh my days!
So these are the football products up to 2023, but what will boots, balls and gloves look like in 2024 and the future? So some products coming out in 2024 include the new Euros ball, which is the same as the 2022 World Cup ball, but just a different design, so not much is going to change there. And goalkeeper gloves haven't changed much either, staying pretty much the same. One thing we will see a lot more is bringing back remakes of old boots like these Predators. The nostalgia factor is a big selling point for a lot of people, and these look unbelievable. And here's some ideas of what football products might look like even further into the future. Some really cool futuristic designs, but I've made a full video on what football will be like in the year 2050, so I'll leave a link to that in the description below.